Florida Governor Ron DeSantis trying to shake up the 2024 race after officially launching his bid for the White House and calling it the Great American Comeback. But it was a rocky start. DeSantis' campaign kickoff on Twitter was marred by a slew of technical difficulties. DeSantis later joined Fox News host Trey Gowdy for his first interview as a presidential candidate.
We know the country's on the wrong track. We see it with our eyes. We feel it in our bones. We see the border being overrun. We see crime infesting the cities. We see the federal government making it more difficult for families to make ends meet. What I will do is help restore normalcy to our communities, integrity to our institutions, and sanity to our society. Truth needs to be the foundation of everything we do, and common sense can no longer be an uncommon virtue.
DeSantis is now going toe-to-toe with former President Trump, but a new Fox News poll shows that Trump still has a commanding lead for the GOP nomination. The Florida governor is also facing a hostile media who are not too thrilled about his candidacy.
It's a mess. So just get out of the race. You're not going to win. Nothing's going to happen for him. Nothing.
I think he has a really great chance at becoming the president of Florida. But outside of Florida, as you say, these are really, really unpopular.
I just think it was an unbelievable miscalculation from the very beginning. Conceptually, it was wrong. In execution, it was a disaster.
It was bad. I mean, it was bad on so many fronts.
You know, Greg, in hindsight, does DeSantis get any credit for trying to do something unusual?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, is it a situation where, or should he have just have done a rally or maybe a video? Like
I think you got to do new things. Politicians all sound the same, and I think glitches actually amplified the story. I wouldn't even have known about it if I hadn't heard that it was screwed up. But you know, I've been on this earth a long time. You know, at least 3 decades or 4. And every Republican candidate is always worse than the one before it, right? So Ronald Reagan was Hitler, then came Bush, worse than Hitler, then another Bush, worse than Hitler, then McCain, lizard Hitler, Romney, misogynist animal torturer Hitler, then Trump comes on, he's really worse than Hitler, and now according to CNN, DeSantis is worse than Trump, making him worse than Hitler. So as long as we have this brand of demonization by the Democrats and the media, you're never going to have a candidate that is Trump minus the drama, because they're always going to create the drama on top of everybody. Vanity Fair already calls DeSantis a white supremacist. They tell people, Hillary says, don't go to Florida. It's a threat to your personal safety. This is something about Governor DeSantis, who really looks like a nerdy version of Bradley Cooper. Let's be honest. He is not a threat. But these networks are now going to be in a quandary, especially CNN. They're already in trouble. If you don't say DeSantis is as dangerous as Trump, that's an endorsement for DeSantis. So if you say he's worse than Trump, then you look like an ass, because you've been pumping out this hysteria that Trump was an existential threat, and now you find a new existential threat that's worse. People already see through this. It can't last forever. I don't know.
But, you know, the truth is, Harold, that the Trump hatred has lasted forever. But at the same time, the Trump still has the highest numbers, the biggest number. And the people who are with Trump are dug in with Trump. So is this really about Biden as opposed running against DeSantis as opposed to Biden running against Trump? Does it come down to whether or not they hate Trump more? Or is it that that DeSantis has a chance to catch up and be as big as Trump against Biden? Did that make any sense?
I always understand what you're saying, Judge. My take on it is this. DeSantis, 6 to 8 weeks ago, was a stronger candidate than DeSantis is today, largely because of the last 8 weeks, Donald Trump's numbers have grown and his numbers have shrunk. So I think Trump remains a formidable in the front run on the Republican side. I agree with Greg in one regard. I think a lot of people would never have known he announced. The vast majority of Americans had not been told that he had a glitch with the thing with Twitter. That being said, I'm old school. I think when you run for public office, particularly for president, and you're announcing it, visuals are important, particularly for a candidate who many people say might have some difficulty interacting with people, that he may have some views that may not be consistent with sort of a national mainstream set of views. I would think you would have wanted to have a visual and let people like you, let people see that there's something appealing about you. He's a good-looking guy. To even be compared to Bradley Cooper is a good thing. So to be on television and lay out your views and to lay out your path. Two, it would give him an opportunity even more so to say, Mr. Trump, I want to debate you. I would have ended my launch speech if I were him, saying, Mr. President, I understand you don't want to debate me. Perhaps you don't want to debate me because my ideas are superior, but whatever the case, I hope you will debate me. And three, I think Karl Rove nailed it today in the Wall Street Journal. And I don't always agree with Karl, but I read him every week because I think he's smart. I think we're seeing a big battle set up in the Republican primary between the Tim Scott brand of politics, which is sunny, kind of positive, can link it to Reagan, and those that are not. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is not sunny, but his approach to campaigning is very different and sometimes can be punishing. So we'll see where it goes.
Will you announce on the 5? Be honest.
That would be new and different.
New and different,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
on
right.
television.
And
And you can bring your family and make it traditional.
And if we had a glitch, we
Yes.
could.
I am the glitch.
All right. You know what, Dana, on Fox News last night, DeSantis talked about things like policy things like the border and crime and inflation. How did those points compare to the value pointing of the woke ideology?
It's a great question. So I think that one of the things he has demonstrated, now that people get to see him a little bit more, like in that interview that Trey did last night, is a policy fluidity with complete competence and an example for everything that he's talking about. And he doesn't hesitate, and he knows his stuff. Okay, so if that's what you're looking for, that is pretty interesting for people. The launch, maybe it wasn't great, but I'm thinking about Elon Musk. He's willing to have a $2 billion rocket blow up as an experiment just to see what could we learn here. Mm-hmm. So I think that one of the things that they did last night was find out, oh, okay, Twitter Spaces needs a little work. Okay, now maybe I'm going to be splitting hairs here, but let me do it for their perspective. Last night was an announcement that Ron DeSantis is running for president. His campaign office is billing next Tuesday in Iowa as their campaign kickoff event. And that's where I think, Harold, you're going to see a little bit more of the tradition that you are mentioning. I think that some launches are memorable. Most are not. Let me tell you one that's memorable. Kamala Harris. Amazing launch. Remember all the people that were there? And even President Trump at the time said, wow, she's got a good chance. She was the first one to drop out. So the launch doesn't really matter. It's what happens after that. One of the things that is a challenge and an opportunity for Ron DeSantis is there is a lot of misconception out there amongst people. I heard somebody today say, well, isn't he advancing racist policies? And isn't he against gay people? And isn't he banning all the books? And I started to try to explain on their behalf. And I thought, wait, well, that's not my job. That's his job. And he's got a big one in front of him on that front.
Yeah, he does have a big job. But, Lawrence, Biden's numbers are in the 30s. I mean, and Kamala, talk about her falling out. I mean, she's even below that. I mean, how is it that Biden is so strong against some of the Republicans? What is that about?
I don't think he's strong, honestly.
Well, that's what the polling is showing.
I know. I think that he had his shot. 52% of Americans felt like under Donald Trump that their lives were better, and they chose Joe Biden strictly because they wanted to bring down the temperature, and that he was supposed to be the elder statesman and all that nonsense. Well, that's over. That's over. We've seen how he's governed. He didn't unify the country. Life is not better under him, and it's easy to vote based on emotion when life is good for you. Now you got people losing their businesses. You got egg prices going up, which is why I think, as I travel the country, the Republican base, and I think people discount them so much, but they are not moving. They're not moving. And they want a firebrand as well. He didn't do that last night, DeSantis. It was boring, it was stale, and he was reading off a paper. I can tell because his cadence changed when he was with Trey. He had a little bit of emotion there. Mm-hmm. And if you're
Trey's hair.
Well, it may be. It changed. It got his attention. If you want to take on the leader of the Republican Party and someone, listen, I'll tell you this. There's a reason why people aren't afraid of Donald Trump in Washington. They're afraid of his voters in the Republican Party. They know the way he's able to gravitate them because he's the first one that bypassed the typical Washington stuff and listened to them. DeSantis, as polished as he is, he's still a typical politician. And he showed that last night. And if he wants to take on Donald Trump, he's going to have to change his strategy. Hiring the same consultants, and I know all of them, is not going to help you, bud. There's a lot of people that were polished in 2016. Ted Cruz was known as a firebrand of conservatism and could put the policy debate out there, knows the Constitution by heart. You got Rand Paul that was on the stage, Jeb Bush that inherited a political family that knows all the things to do, and it still did not work. So if you're going to run against him, and I know DeSantis, one of his talking points is now, I'm the only one that can win. I heard that in 2016 as well. Yeah. So you got to make a different debate.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.